Well, our guest today is Sean Brulman. He's actually from Iowa, and he is the Executive Director of the Purity Courses for Setting Captives Free Ministries. He's Director and Counselor of the retreat center called Rekindling the Flame, which is also part of that ministry, Setting Captives Free. Well, welcome to Lifeline.
Welcome. Nice to be here. Nice to be here.
Now, I'll just set a little background here, Sean, because some viewers may recall this, but we've had your founder and associate here, Mike Cleveland.
Yes.
From Cleveland, Ohio, which is one I always remember. And he's a pilot for Continental Airlines. Mm-hmm. And he's the founder of this ministry, SettingCaptivesFree.com. It's on the internet, isn't it? Tell us just a little overview about it.
Well, the purpose of Setting Captives Free is simply to present a message of hope, gospel-centered hope and freedom to those who are struggling in the grip of habitual sin.
Yeah.
And that God sets them free for His glory, and He sets them free through the power of His Word and through the grace that the Holy Spirit brings us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, can I ask you what kind of numbers SettingCaptivesFree.com is ministering to?
I think the last time I've checked, we have had about 250,000 people that have signed up for our various courses that we offer.
That is amazing. Wow. 250,000 people.
Yes.
When Mike Cleveland was here, I believe one of the first times, he surprised me because he said that your servers registered 10,000 hits in the hour, I think it was the hour or maybe the 2 hours following the broadcast of that particular program.
Shows that there's a great need, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And you primarily do this through the internet, don't you?
Yes.
Setting Captives Free is like an internet ministry to people with various addictions. Now, we're going to talk more about that, but both you, Mike Cleveland, and you have a story of your own addiction, don't you?
Yes.
Let's go back to your boyhood. There's something that happened in your life.
Well, a lot of times people's testimonies start with them saying that at a very young age I came to know Jesus as Lord. Well, if it was the truth of the matter is, in my life you could say that I came to know Satan as master. Wow. Because I was introduced to the pleasures of the flesh by an older individual in my family. And those seeds of lust that were sown grew quickly. Mm-hmm. When I was probably 7 years old, I and a friend were out playing, just as farm kids do, out by the creek. And we ran across a magazine that someone had discarded out of their vehicle. And not only was it what you would call normal pornography, but this was filled of images of rape and torture and murder. So here I am. This is the first exposure I've had to this type of thing, and I remembered what happened when I was younger, and I'm thinking, well, this must be what
is normal.
Is normal.
That's what you thought.
What people do. What people do. So I had a totally twisted sense of what intimacy was, what sex was all about, and those chains and those hooks that the enemy sunk into my heart, they grew and they got deeper. I went all through my junior high and high school life just walking in a fog of lust and impurity. Like I said, a twisted sense of what women were. Saw them as objects, not as people. Mm-hmm. And that affected my relationships. Growing up. Mm-hmm. Also lived in this fantasy world because of what I read in the stories and in the pictures that I saw and in the movies that I witnessed. Here I built this world in my mind that had no basis in reality at all.
Somehow, though, that didn't fill you with joy, like you weren't happy in this.
Oh goodness, no. Just like it says in Jeremiah that when people turned to those broken cisterns, there was nothing there. There was no satisfaction to be found at all. But I kept trying.
Were you a Christian at the time, or did you
family attend church? No, I was not. So my family did attend church. Yes, I was raised in a very religious home. I went to church all the time. Every Sunday I went to church. My parents were very devout religious people. And this type of thing, which only accentuated the problem for me because I knew that what I was doing was wrong. I knew it was sin. I knew I was a sinner headed for hell. I mean, I heard that preached every Sunday across the pulpit, and I knew that I needed to do something. But at that point, I was too young. I had been told as I grew up in the church that I was in, that I was too young. I needed to be older before I really understood what it was that I was doing by becoming a Christian. So because I had this, John 3:36 says that the wrath of God abides on those who don't believe. Well, that's where I was at, and I knew God's wrath abided on me, and I just lived in fear. When we would go to sleep at night, I could not fall asleep. I would literally jerk myself awake dozens upon dozens of times, because as soon as my eyes would start to close, I would imagine that someone was coming in the door of my bedroom, and they were going to kill me. Thus,
Many times, though, what I've noticed is we preach the truth, which it is true, that God does not approve of sin. But sometimes we forget to talk about deliverance, that God has a desire to set people free.
Right.
So you came into the knowledge when you were pretty young about that God had an open door. But what was the first step that you walked into as the church, tried to bring you to deliverance?
Well, it was interesting because it was actually the church that we went to for help. My parents knew that I was miserable.
Did they know the nature of the problem?
I think they did. We never really spoke about it, but I know that my parents would discover magazines periodically, and of course I would dismiss them. They were embarrassed by it. I was embarrassed by it. You don't talk about sex in the culture that my parents were raised in. So therefore, I was just kind of left to figure it out on my own, what you pick up in the playground, just like most other people do.
Right.
And they knew I was miserable. They knew I was. And they went to the church for help.
Yeah.
They said, what can we do to help him? And what the church did is they sent me to a psychiatrist and to the professional secular counselors in order to find help, because they presumed that this issue was too big for them to deal with. It was out of their hands. I mean, how do you deal with somebody who's an addict?
Yeah.
So I went to psychiatrists on and off for probably half my life, probably 15 years.
How old were you at that time?
I think I initially started going when I was 14, 15 years old. That's when my first visit was. And I took pills. I was on antidepressants, medication, sleeping pills at the same time because I couldn't sleep. I was miserable.
Yeah.
And for many years of my life, I lived in that fog of psychotropic drug-induced.
Did this help in any way, or?
No, it didn't. Actually, the one thing that initially helped me a little bit is I had learned from the professionals that this was my dad's fault.
Oh.
I mean, after all, there was 12 years between me and my next oldest sibling. I was primarily raised as an only child. My dad was 44 or 45 years old when I was born. Well, he didn't play with me when I was going through my junior high years. He didn't go to sporting events. He didn't encourage me to, we didn't do guy things. And then then there was that was keyed upon as, this is where the problem lies. That your father is not nurturing you enough. He's not providing for you. And because of his lack of involvement in your life, now you're looking to other things. Yeah. Well, that all sounded good on the surface. But deep down I knew that when I stood before God one day, that wasn't going to cut it.
Right.
It didn't work for Adam and Eve to point the finger at someone else.
Right.
And I knew it wasn't going to work for me either.
Yeah. Despite that, though, when you got married, you decided to go to church, still trying to see perhaps God would be the answer. Yes. I guess at the bottom, like deep down inside, you kind of felt, if this man can't help me, if this psychiatrist can't help me, perhaps God will. Yeah. So you got married, starting to go to church.
Well, it wasn't even as much maybe God can help me. Instead, it was, well, maybe the church can help me.
Okay. Yeah.
See, I met my wife Julie when I was 17 years old, and when she met me, she had no clue about what was going on in my heart. She just saw this, suave, debonair young guy, and thought I was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't know the depth of the sin in my heart, and one of the things that I regrettably did, of course, is that I tried to involve her. I tried to bring her into this web of sexual impurity that I was ensnared in. So I would try to encourage her to look at pornography, try to become involved in some of the things that we were witnessing happening on the screen.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's no surprise to you that it was only a matter of time before we found ourselves in trouble. And I realized that I got a phone call saying that I'm pregnant. So at the age of 19, my wife is pregnant.